Hello everybody, Jordan here, the PH is silent. Elder evils, ancient, powerful, and generally evil entities. Cults worship them, channeling the far realm to usher in the end of the world, and to destroy all of creation. In this video, we're talking about the elder evil Kyuss, also known as the Worm That Walks. His followers hope to usher in the destruction of the world using his undead creations, the Ragnarok of D&D, known to a few as the Age of Worms. Kyuss was a former demigod who was changed into an elder evil. His true history is a mystery, but there are guesses as to his origin. Most believe he was once a high priest of Orcus, the demon lord of undeath. By worshipping Orcus, Kyuss became a powerful necromancer and learned to create interesting and new forms of undead. Famously known for creating the spawn of Kyuss, which can be found in the 5e supplement Volo's Guide to Monsters. This is an undead plague that has ravaged the Underdark for a long time. A spawn of Kyuss from a distance looks like a regular zombie, but the body is full of green worms that help animate the corpse and can potentially transfer the zombie-like status to others. If one jumps into your body, it will attempt to burrow into your brain, kill you, and now you too become an undead zombie, host to these green worms that reproduce within your husk, ready to infect others. This is a reflection of Orcus's intent to replace all life with undeath. More info on Orcus and his role in D&D in the top right corner. But fear not, an effect that cures disease or removes a curse will destroy these worms within your body and save your life. Kyuss, when still mortal, was exiled by his society for generally being really evil and constantly speaking about the end-time prophecies. Rather than become an outcast, he started a cult and became their prophet. His followers saw him as a servant of the gods, and people worshipped out of fear, hoping they would be spared the wrath of these evil deities when the end time comes to be. Classic evil deity move. Kyuss and his followers discovered the ruins of a dead civilization, and Kyuss with his cult took up residence there. Not much is known about the dead culture except that they were 6-armed spellweavers. Now, this ruin in the jungle became their new home, and Kyuss ruled as a god king, like a pharaoh. He knew his path was not finished, though. It was his destiny to become a true god. This destiny was solidified when some ancient metal plates were found, which held terrible secrets, but also confirmed everything Kyuss had ever prophesied. Kyuss studied the metal plates and discovered that they were instructions. His followers had dug up a large stone obelisk known as the Spire of Long Shadows, that was also linked to the ritual inscribed on the plates. In order to ascend, Kyuss was going to have to pay a terrible price. The deaths of his entire cult. He sent out his head priest to murder everyone in their commune, and then Kyuss himself murdered those priests. With the blood of thousands on his hands, he stood before the great obelisk and recited the words that were now etched into his mind. Once finished, he stepped onto the stone and his body fused with that of the obelisk. It is said that at that moment, Kyuss both lost and gained his divinity. What was created was something far worse than perhaps Kyuss even imagined. Although he eventually does break free and becomes the 30-foot-tall creature composed of writhing maggots held together by pure hatred in the shape of a tall giant, we won't see that for many centuries. The lore I found clearly states that he steps into the obelisk and is then trapped there, which made for some adventures in 3rd edition where a cult of the Worm That Walks tries to break Kyuss free from his prison. In the case that the cult is successful, they do have stats for Kyuss. Literally, Kyuss is a humanoid-looking giant that is composed entirely of maggots and worms. A few monsters show up like this in 5th edition D&D, but nothing on the 30-foot scale that is Kyuss. Kyuss's mind is fractured and spread out between every worm that is a part of him. He does have one major feeling that unites all the worms, and that is frustration. Frustration that he cannot break free and fulfill his destiny of creating the Age of Worms, an apocalypse of sorts in the worlds of D&D where all life is dead and everything has become food for the worms. To follow and worship Kyuss is to become undeath. Your body becomes a vessel for worms to feast on. And due to this, many of his followers wear masks to not shock the normals as they prepare for the return of Kyuss. Kyuss and some of his minions were detailed in the 3.5 supplement Elder Evils, and 2 of them have some really fun descriptions. Edwin has nothing remaining of his meat and bones, existing as a pile of worms, hidden behind a green cloak and a mask. Now, the Herald of Kyuss is a devoted servant that hides himself magically behind many different masks. He could be anyone or anything. His normal form is an awful blend of worm, octopus, and insect. Now, despite this, he is quite eloquent in speech and has great manners. In 2005, Dungeon Magazine started one of their adventure paths. These were full adventures that went from levels 1 to 20 for D&D 3.5, but they were spread out over a number of issues of the magazine. Personally, I think this is kind of fun. Both the Dungeon Master and the players don't really know where the adventure is going to go or end up. And I don't think you could pull this off in today's D&D world. I mean, releasing partial content over a 12-month period seems like a silly idea, but it is kind of fun in a way. Now, starting in issue 124 of Dragon Magazine and completing in issue 135, this adventure path dealt with Kyuss and was titled The Age of Worms. The backstory is much of what I described earlier. Kyuss gathered followers, killed them, and stepped inside the monolith. Now, this is set in Greyhawk, and a dragon lover of Tiamat, who was wronged by Tiamat, sought out the mythical obelisk to gain power and protection against his vengeful lover. This dragon was named Dragotha, and he broke off a piece of the obelisk, or the whole obelisk, and flew it north to his lair. There he spoke with Kyuss and learned how to release him from the stone. Kyuss promised Dragotha that if he was free, Dragotha would live forever. So, finishing the ritual, Dragotha released Kyuss. Now, Tiamat soon caught up with Dragotha and murdered him. But Kyuss, true to his word, raised Dragotha back from the dead as a powerful Dracolich. Kyuss, now free with a Dracolich pet, began preparations for the Age of Worms, the end times. Dragotha's lair became known in Greyhawk as the Wormcrawl Fissure, and plenty of creepy crawlies were pushing forward from there. In an effort to stop this evil, a group of druids stole Dragotha's phylactery, and Dragotha flew away to find it, frightened of the fact that he might die again, like for reals this time. The rest of the druids were able to push back the worms and Kyuss into the Wormcrawl Fissure, binding him once more in the monolith, and hopefully forever. But Dragotha never did find his phylactery. The druid cabal that stole it and also re-imprisoned Kyuss faded away over the course of a century. Few alive remember the events of the past. And Dragotha, biding his time, set in motion a series of events that would once again free Kyuss and usher in the Age of Worms. It's a pretty fun adventure, and I wouldn't mind bringing it to 5th edition. The adventure is a mystery of sorts. The PCs have never really heard of the Age of Worms, and everyone they meet that might have knowledge of it, or Dragotha, mysteriously are murdered. It's dangerous to ask too many questions. You'll end with a push into the Wormcrawl Fissure to fight Dragotha, the Dracolich who protects the monolith, and if you are unable to stop Kyuss from returning to this world, the only option left is to fight. Now, Key-OOS won't be easy to destroy, and the adventure actually harkens back to another adventure that I love, The Rod of Seven Parts, where you are required to find a very specific weapon to defeat the end boss. Although no such weapon is written into the adventure directly, it is hinted at by the authors that this might be the best way to finally dispatch Kyuss forever. Perhaps a sunblade to slice the worm that walks in half. You must enter the monolith to fight or recapture Kyuss into the magical monolith, the Spire of Long Shadows, which may or may not be a direct gateway to the Far Realm. A very fun adventure with levels 1 to 5, mostly exploring your surroundings in Greyhawk. The Age of Worms path really begins around levels 5 or 6. And I believe you can still buy the adventure from Paizo, because Paizo was the publisher of this Wizards of the Coast magazine during the run of Age of Worms. It would be fantastic if they created an anthology and bundled the whole thing into a PDF that you could buy, but no. The authors did put together a PDF that's available to help fill in some gaps that were present in the original publication, and I'll put that down in the doobly-doo below. They also gave detailed ways to put this campaign into other settings, like Eberron or the Forgotten Realms. Now, in 4th edition Dungeons & Dragons, Kyuss was considered an elder evil, and I mentioned it earlier editions, he was a demigod that was transformed into something different. So for 5th edition, if I had to classify him, I'd say he best fits a Great Old One. Dragon Magazine 403 has some Warlock information on strange constellations and the Star Pact that Warlocks had in 4th edition. Star Pacts are basically where Great Old One pacts came from. In 4E lore, the stars were sometimes living things, or unique power came from the alignment of these celestial bodies. Now, when time comes to a close, most of those stars in the night sky will be burned out, but a few will remain, and these are known as the Elder Constellations. They were powerful monstrosities which perhaps came from someplace farther than the Far Realm, and I call this place the Farer Realm. The worm that walks in this 4E constellation lore is not a star, but a huge sentient tear in reality. The other side of this is a world of swarming maggots and worms that goes on forever. An entire plane of reality of worms that give off an eerie green light. Somewhere in there, Kyuss's mind is captured, or perhaps he is the demiplane. Imagine fighting a 30-foot humanoid creature made up of worms, only to discover that the more you hack away, more worms spring forth from a fissure at the center of the monster's chest. You'll never win unless you close that portal and stop the worm that walks. Thank you for watching, everyone. Will you be using Key-OOS in a campaign anytime soon? The 3.5 D&D supplement Elder Evils has a stat block for him, link in the doobly-doo below, but there is also probably a 5e conversion somewhere. If you're new here and liked the video, please subscribe. Share it with your gaming group. I make weekly videos on the creatures, lore, and worlds of Dungeons & Dragons. Thank you again, patrons, for keeping the lights on over here. I will see you all